Hey, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to Moment of Clarity. Thanks for joining me. I caught some of your very clever chit chat in the sidebar. Although I don't know about, where was it? Someone said they watch every episode except sometimes. That is unacceptable. You have to watch every episode. I only need to do them every time except sometimes. Except sometimes for me, not for you. You don't get except sometimes. Thanks for joining me, guys. So I have a big interview for you if he's able to show up. I hope he is. Sivan Tal is the father of two children who are refusing to join the IDF, the Israeli military. Now, many of you may know, some of you may not know, that in Israel, being in the military is required. It is not a choice. It is not let's threaten you with the inability to pay for college. It is not here's a way to get ahead if you join the military. It's just you must join the military. And so completely compulsory there, and you're not allowed to say no. Unless you're apparently hyper religious. If you're Hasidic, Orthodox or something, they don't join in the military. They get the super religious exemption. I believe in super fairy tales exemption. Would that be great if you could do that? If the draft back in the U.S. during Vietnam, you were like, hold on, I believe in super fairy tales, and they were like, all right, not for you then, not for you. Please take a second to share this video, by the way, let everyone know. But so it is compulsory there. And now there are various conscientious objectors in Israel that refuse to be a part of it. Sivan Tal's older daughter was well known for, or did a bunch of interviews, a bunch of media for refusing to go. Because, and in the emails I've exchanged with them, they understand that the Israeli military, just like the U.S. military, is involved in many war crimes and horrific shit, along with the occupation of Palestine, and they don't want to be a part of it. And the punishment is prison for people who don't join the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, because just like our Defense Department here in the U.S., we pretend it's defense. We like to pretend, we're just defending ourselves against all these people who keep showing up and attacking us. What could we do? Of course it's offense, right? It's ongoing obliteration of countries, both via bombs and via economic war. So you go to prison if you don't serve there. And their family has refused to do it. Now, this one is, so their son is now of military age. I'd mentioned the daughter before. The son is now of military age. And they may be setting a legal precedent in that the parents, so Sivan Tal, who I hope shows up in a minute. If he doesn't show up, then I will have him on soon, and we'll talk about another story for a few minutes. But they're setting a new legal precedent by saying that although their son may be, I think 18 is the same age in the U.S. I could be wrong on that. Could be 16, but we'll find out once we speak to him. But although their son is of military age, they say we are still the guardians and we are refusing to send him. And also the son doesn't want to go because he too understands the crimes the military is involved in. But they're saying that you want to claim that our child is an adult and can make this decision for himself, but we're saying no, we are still his guardians and we refuse to allow him to be involved in war crimes. So it could set a whole new legal precedent and be a very interesting moment, to say the least. So if you have a second, please hit subscribe, hit the thumbs up button, share this video. And if you're on Facebook, come over to youtube.com/Moment of Clarity. Oh my God, I forgot to start the rock fin. Let's go do that. There's always multiple buttons you gotta push, I just do the one. It should just be one button. Okay. Now we're going on Rockfin. Sorry for the delay. If anyone's on Rockfin, you didn't miss too much. You missed the intro about the interview that I may not be having today because so far Sivan Tal has not showed up. But that's okay. We will have him back soon or have him on soon. I guess you can't be back if you haven't been here. Isn't that a message for life? Hey, listen, I'd like to be back, but I can't be back if I haven't been there. Well, let's talk about another story, and we'll wait and see if Sivan Tal shows up, and if not, we'll just talk about this other story. So this has not gotten much coverage in the mainstream media, other than talking about how it's a voting rights bill. The HR1 is they're praising it as to further facilitate voting rights. But as the Green Party has said, and I'll show you their tweet, I think this is incredibly important. So yeah, the Green Party is saying Democrats are selling HR1 as a voting rights bill, but they aren't telling you about a little-known poison pill designed to further restrict your choice by suppressing independent candidates and parties. Tell Congress, don't let HR1 attack voter choice. So they are saying, Green Party is saying, down with HR1. HR1 is being sold as a money out of politics, yet it quintuples the amount of money Green and Indy presidential campaigns would need to qualify for public matching funds, from $5,000 in each of 20 states to $25,000 in each state. Here's why that's an attack on democracy and voter choice. Ballot access laws make presidential campaigns the only viable way for small parties to get ballot lines in many states. HR1 would put public matching funds critical for ballot access drives out of reach for Greens and independents, just when 62% of U.S. voters want a new party. So you hear what this is saying. This is the Democrats and are running around saying this is great for voting, this is great for democracy, when in fact, this is quietly a way to stop third parties from getting even as close as they've gotten to having successful presidential campaigns, which, let's be honest, not very close. But, they didn't like that Jill Stein was on the ballot in a bunch of places. That really pissed off the Democrats, right? And they worry that if a Bernie Sanders or another popular progressive were to leave the Democrats and join a third party, that it would be tough to stop them from succeeding, considering, as the Green Party just mentioned in that tweet, 62% of people in America are now declare themselves independent. Not of one party, not the independent party, but just independent. Meaning that it's far more than the number of people. It's around 30-some% call themselves Democrat, 30-some% call themselves Republican, I believe. Although that wouldn't actually add up, because then you're at 122%. So maybe I haven't seen the latest polls. But anyway, more people, we'll just leave it at this number, more people call themselves independent than call themselves either Democrat or Republican. And this HR1, which they are claiming is to help democracy, is to help us be able to vote, is to help our choices be counted, actually makes it far more difficult for those third parties to get on the ballot. And as they were mentioning, that if you get a lot of the time, the only way to get on at those lower level ballot, run for other offices, is to have a presidential line on the ballot. So lots of times they, if the Green Party presidential candidate is not on there, then no Green Party is on there. I mean, this is, I've hardly heard people talking about this. I found out about it from the Green Party, but yet again, we see the Democrats acting like they support democracy, acting like they want to help you get your choice. But we know the reality is they only want to help you if you're voting for them, if you're voting for at least one of the two main parties, one of the two corporate parties. That is the only thing that they will support, that they will stand up for. So I mean, you have this bill that is quietly making it more difficult for third parties to run. And that would go for another third party people are excited about, the Movement for a People's Party, right? Founded by Nick Brana, who I've had on this show many times. And it would become much more difficult, not impossible, but much more difficult for them to raise $25,000 per state. Obviously, that is an easy matter, a laughing matter for corporate parties. But for those not taking corporate money, it becomes far more difficult. So this is designed, really, this bill is designed, or at least that part of it, the poison pill part of it, is designed to make it a lot harder to get third parties to achieve anything. Let's see, to continue to read from the Green Party's tweets, H.R. 1 would eliminate the limits on donations and expenditures candidates can receive and make. What kind of campaign finance reform is that? It would eliminate the limits on donations and expenditures. I mean, how is that helping democracy? How is that even pretending to do something for democracy? It clearly is just meant to allow the corporate candidates to purchase this system even more. I mean, they have it on lock, but they're afraid of the risk that third parties might represent. To continue to quote from the Green Party, H.R. 1 would inflate the amount of money national party committees can give to candidates from $5,000 to $100 million. Jesus Christ. Would inflate the amount of money national party committees can give to candidates from $5,000 to $100 million. An astonishing increase of 1,999,900%. That would give party bosses virtually unlimited power to flood elections with big money. Jesus Christ. This is one of the most disastrous bills I've ever fucking seen. That's crazy. But yeah, so just utter garbage. I mean, you guys should be reading up about this, and we should hold the Democrats to account on this. Because this bill is fucking garbage, and it's being sold as, what's it called? The Voters' Rights Act, or the Voting Rights Bill, meant to restrict voter choice. Lovely. Very exciting. Very, very excellent. So yeah, something to consider, something to be talking to people about is stopping that bill. Cause they're nervous. The Democrats saw the writing on the wall, both in 2016 and in 2020. They nearly lost both of those primaries to the progressive, to Bernie Sanders. They cared far less about whether they defeated Trump than whether they just made sure Bernie Sanders did not win. And that is how they ended up with Hillary Clinton, who indeed lost to Trump. And that is how they ended up with Joe Biden, a catastrophic candidate who barely scraped by on the back of a pandemic that was dealt with horribly. I mean, there is no chance Biden would have won this thing without a pandemic, without the unthinkable happening. But the Democrats weren't concerned about that. The Democratic establishment was more concerned at stopping the progressive wing of the party, which they did by rigging the primaries both times. And now they're trying to make it more difficult for third parties, because that's another thing they fear. They know that if Bernie or maybe even Tulsi Gabbard were to leave and go to one of these third parties, go to Green Party or to People's Party, that party would become nearly unstoppable. I mean, at the very least, be hugely competitive with whatever garbage corporate candidate the Democrats put up next. So they know that. And so they're trying to make it as difficult as possible to have that happen in case that were to happen. Okay, so I am going to take a wild guess that Sivantal is not showing up. Maybe something important happened in his life, which is okay. I figured this would happen eventually. You can only have so many times that you book people and tell them the time to show up and go live hoping it happens. And sometimes it doesn't happen. But I would love to answer some of your questions or topics. If you have any topics you want me to talk about. Also, all of the donations today are going to people in need. You guys who are in need, if any of you are, you're welcome to email commoncensored@protonmail.com. We were able to help out 6 or 7 people already with $50 to $100 donations to help out them get past that kind of paying the bills finish line, difficult bill or something they were really struggling with that they were really worried about. And we were able to help them out already with just, we really only did one day of fundraising last Sunday, and we're going to be continuing it this Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern with Eleanor Goldfield. And hope you guys will do that. But yeah, you can donate, and all of the proceeds will be going to that. As I mentioned on my podcast with Eleanor, the Common Censored, we have been royally fucked by Patreon. Now, luckily, Patreon is not my career. It was mainly just to help fund the podcasts. It was not like my life depended on Patreon. So I'm fucking annoyed, but it's not like my career's crushed or something. We're gonna have something new for you, something Patreon similar but better, hopefully soon. So keep an eye out for that. If you are a member on Patreon, as I said on the podcast, please don't cancel your subscription yet. Wait until we tell you what the new place is, the new page is, and that would be awesome. But basically, and if you know any creators out there who are on Patreon and their members are signed up per post, meaning every time they post, the member pays whatever, $1 maybe. Warn them that if they switch to per month, which is what Patreon pressures you to do by little pop-ups telling you to switch to per month, that it can destroy the membership. Because it basically takes, we put out 4 podcasts a month, meaning people were charged 4 times a month. That's what they expected. That's what they signed up for. Now, all of a sudden, they're charged once a month, the amount they used to be charged 4 times a month. So 75% of what our Patreon has now been destroyed, and Patreon couldn't give a flying fuck. They do not care at all. It does seem odd that they would want to destroy their own membership, because the percentage that they get. But the reason for that is that they, I assume that they have a lot of creators that do not create much. So they want people signed up per month so that creators who aren't creating can continue to charge people even when not creating. That would be my guess as to why Patreon wants this, because it benefits them once you calculate all of it. But for me specifically, where I am creating, where our podcast does come out 4 times a month, it's a disaster. And unfortunately, I fell for it because it seemed like not a big thing it didn't seem like a big choice. It seemed like a rather minor choice that people might want. But anyway, we'll have something new for you soon. Okay, so let's see here. So Martin's talking about, it was less about signing a pledge. Martin's talking about the DNC put in a new, this is before 2020, put in a new stipulation. It wasn't about signing a pledge. It was that the head of the DNC can now just decide a presidential candidate is not presidential enough. Democratic enough to be the presidential candidate. So basically, at any point, Tom Perez could have, and they may have done this. They may have decided to use this as like a nuclear option at the last minute, decided that Bernie Sanders he could just make an announcement. Perez could have gone up there and made an announcement at the very end of the contest. He could have said, hey, we know Bernie won, but we decided he's not Democratic enough. Because look at this speech he once gave where he said the Democrats are corrupt or whatever. And he can just point to one of his speeches, say, this doesn't go with what we believe, and you're gone. And so they added that into their bylaws, and I assume it's there permanently, or unless someone were to rip it out, but I assume it stays in there. Meaning that if a progressive, so let's say Tulsi Gabbard were to run this next time again as a Democrat, and she ran away with it. She just did great. She destroyed them. There was no chance of stopping her. They could just come forward and say, yeah, she's out. Which goes with what we found out in court, that the Democratic Party, they said in court that they have the right to pick their candidate, their presidential candidate, without any primaries. they have the right to rig their own primaries. They said that in court. Their lawyer said that in court, that they can go into a smoke-filled room and choose the candidate. So, if they're saying that in court, then what do you think they're saying behind closed doors, right? When Bernie looked like he was going to win. What do you think their real discussions were? Anyway, let me know what other questions you got here. Revelesque is asking, could Biden not make some executive order to keep Texas from creating an American virus apocalypse? I like the new term. It's a good question. I mean, the thing with executive orders is they're normally directions to states to behave a certain way or agencies to behave a certain way. I don't recall any, I don't think legally that through executive order you can tell Americans to just do something. Most executive orders are like Trump telling border security not to allow in refugees from Muslim countries or whatever the fuck he did. The 7 countries he had on his list. Like, it's normally directions to agencies and things like that. And that's why we say that Biden right now could introduce Medicare for all for the entire country, because he could do. We now know what happened in Libby, Montana, is that they directed the agency, the Social Security agency, to provide Medicare for all to Libby, Montana, because they had been subject to the pollution from the vermiculite mine. And vermiculite, I believe, was it's the mineral that remember made Superman really weak. Like, it was like, oh, vermiculite. But so in Libby, Montana, might have been called kryptonite. I don't know. I get the two confused all the time. I accidentally made a necklace out of kryptonite when I meant to make it out of vermiculite. I have an issue. I have a long-standing issue. But so he was able to basically stipulate to an agency that they had to do this thing. And so they went and did it. And he could do that with everywhere in the United States. He could say, hey, Medicare for all agency, U.S. agencies that are in charge of this, go do it. And we could have Medicare for all for the entire country, at least through the end of the pandemic. But really, you could do it forever. He's not going to do that because he's a fucking corporate clown, and perhaps created some of the most racist laws that this country's ever seen, if you really look at the crime bill. But yeah, so I don't think that. I mean, Biden could stipulate things to Texas, but I don't think he could force them to have like a mask mandate or something that I know of. I don't know whether you can have a national mask mandate. I'm not sure how that works. Judy would like everyone to know, as a Texan, that there are lots of good progressives there, along with Republicans. I am well aware. I've played Texas many times, performed in Texas many times, and wonderful people there. But obviously, those are the wonderful people that decide to come to my shows. Thank you, all of you who came out. But yeah, I mean, that's the problem with Texas. It is these groups of wonderful people, like many people in Austin, Texas. Although I did shows in Dallas and Houston. But it's these pockets of wonderful people surrounded by Texas. So that really sucks. But yeah, there's obviously a lot of asshole clowns there, but there's also a lot of good people. And it does kind of suck that, like, in the case of a pandemic, the asshole clowns can run around spewing their assholery on everyone else. It's unlike other things where you could be, if you want to believe in some fucking asshole clown racist cult and go to your cult meetings, you're not pushing that on others. But of course, with a virus, you running around spitting in people's faces, you're impacting others. Let's see what else we got. Oh, I haven't noticed the trolls, but Shane is telling me that there are trolls. No, I am not a communist, if someone was saying that. But, I mean, that kind of thing is that standard procedure to not actually have an intellectual discussion. If you are either incapable or unwilling to engage with these ideas intellectually, in a fact-based conversation about what socioeconomics are, what economics are the best for us. If you're unable or unwilling to do that, then you just yell commie and you run away screaming because you don't want to have that conversation. That conversation is either impossible for you, or you will lose it quickly. I think that for most of these people that just yell commie or communist or whatever, it's more often that they've had glimpses of the kind of intellectual discussion about it, and they know that they would lose. They either know they're ill-informed or they know that their points are no good. And so, well, what do you do when you know that if you were to have an actual genuine discussion, you're going to lose that debate? Well, you just yell a name and run away, because there's no point in engaging in a debate you're going to lose. So yell a name, run away. I mean, that's what you got to remember when you see someone screaming from the hilltops that someone's a communist, you're Russian, you're connected to Russia. And first of all, most of these people don't understand that Russia's very capitalist now. But beyond just that, it comes from a sad place. I think it comes from a place of ignorance usually. Sometimes it comes more from a place of hatred. But deep down, it's an insecure place of ignorance where you just got to yell a name because you want to defend the status quo, but you don't understand how it works. Like when you really get down to it, you don't understand how our systems work. You don't understand what economic force is. You think you have all this freedom when in fact, people don't have freedom. I mean, most of this country is wage slaves to jobs they hate. That's not freedom. That's giving in to, and understandably giving in. I'm not saying giving in like they're weak. I'm saying these are very strong people who want to take care of their families, so they've given in to being beaten down by wage slavery at a job they hate, because what else are you going to do? That's not a real choice, right? And that's the type of discussion that these people don't want to have. Or you point to the fact that the environment is collapsing around us in so many different ways. Not just climate change. Climate change, perhaps the most horrifying, because it will be long-term, meaning thousands upon thousands of years. But our environment's collapsing in many other ways, too. Killed 50% of all wildlife over the past 40 years. And that has to do with consumerism connected to capitalism. It is these things are all, you wouldn't have rapacious consumerism without capitalism. And so we are writing our own death warrant. And you say something like that and they yell, commie. Well, you're not actually having the discussion with me, right? You're yelling a name because you don't want to talk about the fact that capitalism is killing our world. So it's not a real discussion. It's kind of sad. I mean, I feel like these people should maybe crack a book sometime, but, all right. Here's Nick. Is Biden able to instruct Harris to override the Senate parliamentarian to include $15 an hour minimum wage? And if he did, do you think the bill would pass? So, I don't know all the details of the rules of the Senate like that, but I do know this, that the parliament, the throwing it off on the parliamentarian, as Biden and them have done, is garbage. It's just an excuse. The Biden administration will need a lot of excuses to get away with not doing what the people expect them to do, what the people who voted for him expected him to do. Whether it be minimum wage, whether it be decreasing war, all these things, the Democrats need an excuse to explain why the fuck they're not doing any of that shit. And a lot of the time, some of the time, they're going to feed us propaganda as to why they need to keep crushing Venezuela, crushing Iran. So a lot of it will be propaganda, but other times it will be, our hands were tied. We wanted to give you $15 minimum wage, even though we were completely opposed to it until we realized that it was the only way we could win the election. So then we said support it, but we didn't really support it. We just said that so you would vote for us. But now we want to do it, and it's just impossible because of the parliamentarian. Couldn't. The parliamentarian did it. I've actually never heard them point to the parliamentarian as a reason that they couldn't get something. Like this is a whole new level of garbage excuse. But in terms of your specific question as to whether Harris is capable of overriding the parliamentarian, I have no idea. I don't even think most of Congress knows how this shit works. I mean, they're not even reading their goddamn bills. This is part of the reason I said Congress is fucking. They don't matter anymore. They're vestigial at this point. We like to pretend they're all that matters. Our mainstream media will talk about Congress all day long, interview Congress. Here's Congress. Look what Congress did. But really, on a lot of the biggest decisions, they're not involved. We saw what Trump did, almost all of it without Congress. Almost everything Trump did was without Congress. The one thing he did with Congress was give massive tax breaks to the rich. But for the most part, it was without Congress. He got the money for his fucking stupid border wall without Congress. He went on all these wars without Congress, all this bombing without Congress. Even the withdrawing troops was without Congress, and now they've turned that around. The Biden administration turned that around, stopped the withdrawal of the troops. And he shows how much the president could do without Congress if he wanted to, but he also shows how meaningless Congress is. Congress has become this fucking, they've ceded their abilities on like war, on infinite surveillance, on trade deals by passing fast track. They allow the president to just sign these trade deals 100%. They can't change a word of it. Congress is so fucking futile, and yet not only does mainstream media endlessly talk about them, but most of your a lot of your indie media spend all day, every day talking about what a congressperson said or what a congressperson's going to do or what they're going to vote. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, people, what makes you think Congress is all that's going on in this country? If we're going to have mass transformation, large-scale transformation, it's not going to come through Congress. And it's what we need now. Because if you ever want a green thing, even if it's to eat a green thing, I know that's kind of counterintuitive. I want to save the green things so I can eat green things. But that's what I would like. I would like to still have green things so that I can eat green things. Why? And why can't we do that? And if we're going to do that, it's not going to be with Congress. I'm not saying completely ignore them, but we spend way too fucking much time on them. All right, what else do we got? Chris says, eat green rich people. Why are the rich people green? That's what I don't understand. Carne says, it's all performance, which absolutely true. Well, guys, I am sorry that Savan Tal did not make it, but I'll look to have him on. I was unaware about this. This just happened. Laser is saying that Stephen Donziger won his appeal against Chevron. I did not know that. In fact, I'll do some live fact checking here. And I swear to God, Laser, if you're wrong about this. Let's see here. 3 hours ago, Chevron $660 sanction award against Donziger has been nixed. There you go. Well done, Laser. A federal district court order barring Stephen Donziger from raising funds by selling interests in a much litigated foreign judgment against Chevron Corp was too ambiguous to be enforceable. So the barring him is not going to be enforced, meaning he can do it. But it does seem like they're wow. Most of these news articles, though, are not today's news article. But that is not. Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to read more on it, and it's not letting me log into this one. But because the order wasn't clear, the lower court was wrong to hold Donziger in contempt. Oh, that's good. For engaging in that conduct, according to the U.S. Court of Appeals, the appeals court vacated a more than $666,000 sanction issued against Donziger. So I'm wondering whether that means he's still on house arrest. Because as he said in our interview, by the way, if you haven't watched my interview with him, you can watch it at leecamp.com. But I was under the impression, which is also something he said, that he's under contempt for not turning over his laptop and phone to the court because they want to give it to Chevron, which is fucking insane, by the way. It's unheard of for a lawyer to have to turn over his laptop and phone. And he refused to do that, so they're holding him in contempt. But it's possible that it's connected to what I just read you. So it's possible that all of that is thrown out. I'll have to... Nick says he is still on house arrest, which would go to what I was just saying, that the house arrest is, although he was ordered apparently to pay $666,000, that has been thrown out, but he has not been released for not turning over his cell phone and computer, which, because of lawyer-client confidentiality, no lawyer should ever be forced to do that. And I don't know if it ever has been enforced before. It's fucking insane. Vosh would like to know if I would ever appear on the Young Turks if they invited you. So I'm not saying I would never appear on the Young Turks, but I don't think they'd invite me because they don't like to have people on who are to the left of them. And they are basically... They used to be to the left of the Democrats. They now are, in many ways, just standard Democrats. It's kind of sad to see them kind of back down to that point. I used to be on Young Turks fairly regularly. I was on many times. Some of them, though, were on Jimmy Dore's show on the Young Turks. So I don't know if you count that. Back when his show was on the Young Turks. It's not anymore, as most of you know. But I was also on the main show several times with Cenk, and it was back when I used to have a little more belief in the Democrats, and I think the Young Turks used to be a little more edgy. And I've woken up more, and they've gone further to sleep. So we're slowly pulling apart as I wake up, and they try and shut down. Because as Jimmy Dore will tell you, they took $20 million of, you can call it Clinton cash. It's not directly from the Clintons, but it's from a Clinton fundraiser and a Clinton courtesan, as we'll say. So $20 million from the Clintons or Clinton-connected people will get you to chill out a little bit, I think. Get you to calm down a little. So I hope that answers your question, Omar. And free Assange, jail Prince Andrew. Sounds good to me. Prince Andrew, of course, involved with Jeffrey Epstein and has been accused by one of the women of sleeping with her, but I guess when it's sex trafficking of someone under 18, that's actually rape and pedophilia. So those would be the terms that I guess you should be using. Thanks, guys, for saying I should host SNL. That's very kind of you. However, SNL, like many of these comedy shows on our corporate airwaves, they not only do they know how to stay on the right side of the corporate airwaves, but they also have been built up to that point. I mean, SNL is mainstream corporate media, basically. So they'll have some stuff making fun of Trump. Now they'll have some stuff making fun of Biden, whatever. Some you can say that occasionally a joke is edgy, but that's one joke in the midst of a much larger entity, and it's not going to go largely left of the two corporate parties. It's not going to criticize capitalism. It's not going to ask how we can continue down this path while our environment collapses around us. They're not going to get into the socioeconomic model or the fact that, we live in a system of systemic racism, a system of economic force. They're not going to get into that stuff. And it's not just because it's, that's deep and gnarly stuff. It's because they're on that channel for a reason. So they're not going to have someone like me to come host. And there was an example of I remember. And I think this was also NBC. It was the Dana Carvey show. And there's a great documentary on Hulu, unfortunately. It's called like Too Funny or something. And it's about the Dana Carvey show, who had writers that Charlie Kaufman, who, wrote Eternal Sunshine and everything. And Louis C.K. and Colbert was on it. And Steve Carell as well. So, and before they were well known. So these are their early days. And it was this incredible comedy show. But they were doing things that were too edgy for corporate media. They basically didn't understand, I think, what was allowable on corporate media. So they were insulting their sponsors because they found corporate sponsors kind of revolting. And that's kind of a natural decision for a comedian to make. This bothers me. It's gross. Why do I have to talk about why Mountain Dew is good? So fuck that. And so they'd have commercials or something for Mountain Dew, but they'd do these little sketches mocking the product that was funding the show. So they'd talk about the ingredients in Mountain Dew, have little people dressed up and being like, it includes riboflavin dioxide or whatever, like listing these insane ingredients, etc. And guess what? Those sponsors then all pulled out. So the show was slowly losing their ability to be funded. I mean, they only lasted, 6 or 10 episodes or something. But they also, in the documentary, they also say that just the comedy was over a lot of people's heads, and it was on, a family hour where people thought they were getting a family show. But so in the final episode, which I'm not even sure this episode aired, I think they might have said it didn't air, but in the final episode, they'd run out of corporations that were willing to be mocked on their airwaves to sponsor them. And so they ultimately do a commercial for the Chinese restaurant across the street because they literally had no sponsors left that would allow themselves to be mocked. And this goes with the way The Daily Show worked as well, except The Daily Show didn't mock them for the most part. The Daily Show, like your corporate media, funded by these awful corporate entities, would occasionally maybe go after one of them, but for the most part would not. And in the book about The Daily Show, there's an in-depth book that came out after Jon Stewart left about Jon Stewart's reign at The Daily Show. And I found the most important passage to be this, 2 paragraphs. We're talking a book like this, 2 paragraphs that I felt defined a lot of what you need to know about The Daily Show. And it was the part that tells the reader that whenever The Daily Show would write something or have a joke that was supposed to, that was mocking or going after a corporate entity that funded them or funded Viacom, they had a marketing rep call up this corporation and try to get approval Try to talk, let's say Walmart's funding Viacom. Try to talk Walmart into allowing them to make fun of Walmart because it made them cool. So basically a phone call is, listen, you shouldn't be upset about this. It's great. You'll be made fun of, yes, but it's a joke and people will love it. And they'll be talking about Walmart and everything. And the implication is that if they said no, then they weren't talked about. So think about how many fucking stories that stops you from being able to cover if you can't cover corporate America that happens to be funding Viacom. It also means that if a corporation is nervous about getting attacked by The Daily Show, they can go and buy Viacom ad time, and then they'll have some control over it. This is the same reason you see Raytheon, General Dynamics, Lockheed Martin, all these weapons contractors advertising on like Fox News and CNN and MSNBC. They're not advertising because they want you to buy their products, are they? Are there a lot of grandparents watching Fox News in fucking Poughkeepsie who are thinking they see that ad for General Dynamics and they go, honey, what, do we want a laser we can shoot from space? Honey, do we have anti-aircraft missiles? Why don't we get one of those? Not a lot of Lockheed Martin fucking ads getting people to purchase $700 million F-35s or whatever the fuck they are. So why do they have those ads? They have those ads so they have control over that network. They have those ads so that General Dynamic, if a story is being covered by CNN that hurts General Dynamic, they can call up CNN and say, we're withdrawing millions of dollars of ad revenue from you. And CNN will then stop the stories. But of course, a lot of this is done with self-censorship. CNN just knows, let's not cover that story about General Dynamics. Let's not cover that story about Raytheon or Lockheed Martin. They just know that. And that means that they could be doing the most horrific shit, which they are. They're weapons contractors. They're war profiteers. That's slime, that's parasite below, that like the parasites that eat the beetle's dung that was shed out from like a mean beetle, like a real dickhead beetle. And it was like a diarrhea beetle dung. Because it was like, he's just so fucking, he was livid and lactose intolerant, and he ate like a creamy like ice cream pop. And so he had shitty diarrhea. And then the parasites that live on that, war profiteers are just below that. But like a half notch right below that. So they are the worst of the worst. But you never see a story about these companies on CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, NBC News, CBS News. You never see really many stories about them because they basically own the network. They own the right to not be analyzed by the network. Besides the fact that these networks just generally protect corporate America. So that goes on in general. But anyway, hope that cleared it up. Sorry I got all that from one question about SNL, but I hope that made sense. This is one positive, a Daily Show. Ben says that it introduced him to political comedy, and then he went on to find Hicks and Carlin. So I'm not saying there aren't benefits to the Daily Show, but it explains why they're not really digging deep. Batter says Redacted Tonight was a funny show. What do you mean was? The fuck does was mean? Redacted Tonight's still a funny show. God damn it. All right, everybody. That is the show. All donations, I think there were a few. All proceeds are going to people in need. We're going to give you the details about who that's going to on Sunday, 7 p.m. Eastern with Eleanor Goldfield. We'll be talking about that. And hopefully I will have Savan Tal back on soon. No, not back. Hopefully I will have him on soon. And thank you guys for joining me. Hope you enjoyed the show, even with the lack of guest. And keep fighting.